and welcome back to the County Chat Division 1 previews. We're moving through the Division 1 teams and previewing their season for the 2025 season coming up. Last place for the unmoved counties in Division 1, so we've done the promoted and relegated sides. It's the home of Trent Bridge, the new Stuart Broad End. It is, of course, Nottinghamshire CC. They finished in 8th last year and actually at one less games than the relegated team below them in Lancashire. Their leadership team will be very similar to their side in 2023. They're very similar in the fact it is exactly the same. Haseeb Hamid will be the captain and opener again, and they will again be coached by the former England boss, Peter Moores, is their leadership unit. Nottinghamshire will be looking into sort of having a better season than they did last year. As I said, they struggled to win a lot of games. I'm looking in the sort of weaker phase of the game as we do. They try and decide what is going to be worse going into 2025 and maybe the thing they need to improve on or focus in on. And usually for teams that don't win many games but don't go down, it's because they've drawn a lot of games. So a usual sign for a team with a weakness of bowling is not winning games, which is an obvious point, but it is compared to the fact that you might draw a lot of games if you've got a good enough batting unit to be yourself in a situation. As I've gone through these teams and been doing these previews, looking at a lot of numbers, lots of bowling averages, I think there's a bit of a trend where every time you see teams that don't win enough maybe, or draw a lot, have pretty poor bowling averages, because the one kind of leads to the other. Because if you don't, within a season, take a lot of wickets, a low amount of runs maybe, it kind of shows you're in a situation where you're often getting battered out in the end of a game, or the first innings gets away from you and you're not in a position to win a game for these Red Bull sides. So I feel Nottinghamshire do fall into this category, especially looking back into their 2024. This is not to say they don't have plenty of bowling talent. I think they have maybe one of the deepest bowling pools of any, especially seam bowling pools of any team, but it's just a case of they need to prove it for a full season following 2024, which was a bit of a struggle. And they've lost some players. So Ollie Stone has been ruled out for, I think, the whole English summer with a knee injury where he's needing an operation on it. And Dane Patterson, who has moved on to Middlesex. So, and also notwithstanding there, they let go of who I would say is a county championship legend in Luke Fletcher, who is just if you check out his ESPN Quick Info page, he's had a brilliant career, and I thought I should just tip a cap to him because he is a Nottinghamshire legend, played for them his whole career, and it was very enjoyable to watch. But he was released this winter, unfortunately. So this, to me, only kind of made the slight weakness in their side more of a weakness, I guess you would say. I think the lead seam bowling talent they have probably, and especially in England's books, I would say, was Dylan Pennington. England are a big fan of his. He has that kind of thing that they've been looking for in the sort of recent seam bowling pools, if you will. It's sort of pace and bounce, and make what they think will make good bowlers in Australia for the tour coming up, and he typifies that, to be honest. Pennington is a really impressive bowler to watch when he's at full pelt, and he, I think, will be very successful in England. And he had a good season last year. I think, unlike a lot of the seamers who I maybe have a bit of issue with because they've been picked over more proven performers, Pennington did have a very good year in 2024. He took 31 wickets at an average of 23, and he has all the talent to lead this Nottinghamshire attack in 2025, and I think could be a real star for the future for England, as he is really, really talented and really, really impressive bowler, I would say. Joining him for the beginning of the season, sort of the main talent, I would say, within this bowling lineup is actually Fergus O'Neill. So the Victorian Quick, who won Sheffield Shield Player of the Year, which is quite a big honour in Australia this winter just gone. As I'm writing this, as I've said in the first few previews, it's been as the round one's been going on, and he took a debut fifer. I think if you follow Australian first-class cricket, you probably wouldn't be too shocked that Fergus O'Neill was sort of straight into the wickets, and it didn't take much time for him to prove his talent. He's played for quite a while in Australia. He's still in his early 20s, but he averages just around 20 with the ball. Not even, I think he's dipped below it quite a few times in his career. This hat is so tight. Let's just readjust to make that better. There we go. Less of a vice grip around my head, but you do get quite a fun fringe now. It wouldn't surprise me if he can kind of, whilst he's in England, he's not in England for a very long time. He is going to be really impressive. And I think, Nottinghamshire went on to win their first game, and their seam bowling did take them to that victory. But I think if they probably didn't have Fergus O'Neill, I think in that first innings for Durham, they would have got away from them. Durham, this is. So I think he's important. I think if he was there for the full season and maybe he was their main overseas, I think I would be looking at this being their bowling lineup as their main strength because of the depth they have around him in domestic seamers like Dylan Pennington and some bowlers I'm going to mention coming up. But yeah, the England fan of me, as I've said here, kind of wishes he wasn't probably getting overs in England. I think it's almost a certainty that he will play for Australia in the next 10 to 5 years. Just in the case of Australia's seam bowling unit are slowly getting older, and sort of their end will come at some point. But he is only 24. I'm sure he'll be a sort of Ashes nemesis, as I've written here, in the future. So Fergus O'Neill is a bit of a name to look out for, maybe as England fans to worry about a little bit. But yeah, I think if he had a longer season in for Nottinghamshire, because I think he's going in May, just April and May he's going to be here for. I think Nottinghamshire could be looking really, really, really impressive. I'm a big fan of Fergus O'Neill. I think he's very cool. I think he bowls like in a very unique way and incredibly skillful and bowls at a good pace, as it feels like almost all Aussies do. But yeah, he'll be sort of interested to see how his sort of 2 months have gone. But that first game, as I said, went as kind of well as it could do. I'm quite enjoying the angle of this hat now. Another quick who has the potential to totally turn around my prediction is Brett Hutton. In 2023, he took 62 wickets in the County Championship Division 1 at an average of 21, which, I mean, I think I don't need to tell you from the numbers I've been reading out for various seasons, and I've been saying they're good seasons, whatever. 62 wickets is a hell of a lot more. So like Pennington, for example, I think took in the early 30s, and pretty much Hutton 2 years ago took double that. I think that is proof to show how good Brett Hutton can be at his best. But in 2024, due to injury and lack of match fitness, kind of due to those injuries, he only took 6 wickets at an average of 60. I've written here, fast bowling is a cruel game, because it is. He sort of looked like for 1 second Brett Hutton was kind of realising all the potential that had been mentioned about him going into 2023 and years prior. Has this amazing season and then gets injured in 2024, and then all of a sudden I'd sort of forgotten Brett Hutton and it almost existed, and I feel like it'd probably be the case for a lot of people. I think he might be making his debut for this current season, coming up in this sort of round 2, if you will. But if he can return to those sort of 2023 levels, which I think his skills and consistency are more than good enough to do, I think Nottinghamshire could again sort of turn around this bowling lineup. I think the main thing with this Nottinghamshire bowling lineup is just it feels like there's a lot of ifs. There's a lot of injury kind of touted players, and obviously, someone like Fergus O'Neill coming and going. It's like it could, to begin the season, and I think that round 1 fixture showed it. Their bowling lineup looked really, really good, and I think it looked really talented. Young fast bowlers, bowling quick, really impressive. I think it's just a case of them staying fit, and obviously Fergus O'Neill's not staying for the whole summer, so before you know it, you kind of, this very deep and talented bowling unit does look what it is, which is quite an injury prone, maybe therefore quite a lot thinner than you might hope for. And then sort of another string to that bow of that argument, I guess, if you were to say it, is Josh Tongue. I think another sort of tipped by England, sort of bowls a heavy ball, bowls in that 85 mile an hour plus range. And I think, again, he's got like bags of talent. I think he made his debut in the Ashes. He may have even played in some other tests for England, but he's already been sort of tipped again as an England seamer for the future. But it's just a case of staying fit. He's a 27-year-old at this point, and he's only played 50 first-class matches, including those test matches I mentioned. So he's an international caliber bowler, probably. I mean, maybe almost. He probably got to get there. But again, he took a very important 5-wicket haul in that round 1 matchup, and it proves, the talent he has when he's available is really top tier. Durham's batting lineup is nothing to sort of snarl at either. There were good players there he was getting out. I think it's just the ability of someone like him to stay fit, the Pennington to stay fit, Brett Hutton to stay fit, because all of a sudden you start thinking this bowling lineup has got some real talent in it and a real ability to look like one of the best teams in England, especially for the bowling side of it. To supplement this sort of core of sort of maybe domestic talent or Nottinghamshire built talent is the signing of Conor McKerr. He's been in Surrey's books for a very long time. He's a 6'6" South African born quick who has bags of talent. I know a lot about him because of a cricket captain save I do, sort of the equivalent of Football Manager for cricket nerds. He's taken 600 first-class wickets in that. He's nowhere near that in real life. He's had brief spells of playing for Surrey as a 27-year-old. He's had, like a lot of the quicks in Nottinghamshire's team, he's had tons of injuries. I mean, it's often the way for sort of very tall, big, fast bowlers who put a lot of pressure on that front knee and front leg and all of the things in your back. It is just a hard thing to stay fit whilst trying to bowl quick. He sort of came to England with very much the international hopes of qualifying to play for England and play, but he just didn't play for Surrey, let alone to get, look in for England. So I think his idea of moving to Nottinghamshire, I'm sure, will be to get just some good game time and get the ability to maybe actually play and therefore show his talents. Because, again, I think if you just say the word 6'6", South African born quick, it kind of sends chills down any, cricketer's spine, because you can imagine the kind of Morne Morkel types of the past who've really, torn up England fast batting lineups and all these sort of players. It's a kind of a recipe for success, let's say that. So yeah, I'll be interested to see how he does for Nottinghamshire. I'm sure he's got the talent. He's always seemed to be tipped for it. So I think it's just a case of that opportunity and staying fit like the rest of the lineup. I would say Notts have a really, really good all-rounder in County Championship cricket. I think they've got one of the best, another very young, good all-rounder that I feel like there's a lot of them going around in English cricket, which is a really positive thing. But it's Lyndon James. He's probably more of a batting all-rounder than maybe some of the other all-rounders I've been mentioning recently, but he does have a real ability to take wickets. He was the club's second highest wicket taker in 2024, so I guess that sort of shows you all you need to know. He took 27, and yeah, he's a very good enough, like more than good enough to be a fourth seamer, and sometimes he may even be a fifth seamer in this team. But I think he's a really a standout talent for Nottinghamshire, and I think his batting is a particular highlight. He had a very good pre-season with the bat, and again in that round one fixture scored an incredibly important 100 for Nottinghamshire to put them in a good chance to win the game, and which they went on to do. So yeah, I think their bowling unit's one of those funny things. I've said it as their weakness. But before you know it, you're kind of talking yourself into this could be a bit of a strength and a really important part of their team, and just a really good part of their team they've got. But I think that's the thing with Nottinghamshire. I think it's a lot of just unsure about the bowling unit. I think it's the talent is there. I think if you know your cricket and maybe know these players, all of them are good enough to play for England, and all of them good enough to play for the Fergus O'Neill in the case of him play for Australia. It's just a case of them being able to post and being able to turn up and play. Anyway, for spin bowling, I've written here, Nottinghamshire have the outstanding young bowler in England, young spin bowler in England, but I guess you could probably go as far to say as young bowler. But I've even said in maybe the world for the spin bowling, because I think what Farhan Ahmed did in 3 games for English cricket for Nottinghamshire last year, 4 matches even, was genuinely spellbinding. At the time, he was a 16-year-old, which again, I think is just crazy. You think about having big enough hands and all those kind of things to spin a ball properly as an off-spinner. But in 4 matches, he took 22 wickets at an average of 23, all with an economy under 3. And I remember he was bowling loads of overs. It was obviously the end of the season on wearing pitches, but he had the control, he had the ability to set up batters. I remember watching sort of spells of his bowling when he was playing for Nottinghamshire at the end of last year, and spellbinding was a word, a sort of phrase you could use. He is an incredibly impressive bowler and an incredibly... Yeah, for someone of his age, he's obviously turned 17 by now, but I think the idea that he's got that level of control for a spin bowler at that age is just, awe-inspiring is what I've written here, and I think it's a very fair way of putting it, because it just genuinely is. If as a club cricketer you think of a 16-year-old spinner of any kind, it's like they could be really, really talented, but they're probably going to give you quite a lot of freebies. Farhan Ahmed was doing this in County Championship Division 1 and giving very few freebies on very, very much spinning pitches, and he was just getting bowled over and over and over again, and why wouldn't he? He's the younger brother of starlet Rian Ahmed, which I'm sure most people will be aware of, but to kind of compare him, I think genuinely Farhan is probably further along with his spin bowling. I think his control looks a lot better, his understanding of his variations, his ability to just turn his off spinner is really, really impressive. I'm just interested to see how this season will look for him. I think he'll probably have pretty much a full season. I think he's shown the talent to sort of deserve that, to warrant that. And then, after success with the England under-19s, which feels like a funny step down, but for most 17-year-olds, that'd be like a big step up. But yeah, he played for the England under-19s over the winter, and it'll just be interesting to see how sustainable his success is, really, I guess, for Nottinghamshire, and how sustainable that will be over a full season. Because again, he is only 17. He could prove he is human, and that he might, fatigue, and he might struggle to post every game and be up there to play every single fixture. But that will just be all, the matters of what we'll come and find out in 2025. But I'm a big fan of his, if that wasn't obvious. But I'm incredibly impressed by how good he is at such a young age, and it'll be interesting to see how his career kind of progresses. And continuing the spin bowler sort of spin bowler sort of department for Nottinghamshire, all-rounder Liam Patterson-White will look to support or maybe replace Ahmed if he ever does sort of struggle a bit. He had a pretty tough year with the ball last year, Patterson-White. He obviously gives a little bit more with the bat. But yeah, he had averages in the 50s with the ball last year, and that was before Ahmed was getting picked. And I think it was kind of a bit of why not we give Ahmed a go? And he did just totally outperform the spinners that had been going before him. I'm sure someone like Patterson-White and Calvin Harrison, who's coming up, would probably look at it like he got the sort of ability to bowl on the best pitches. But Patterson-White will need to try and return to his sort of controlled best to have any chance of sneaking in as the frontline spinner. But I think, again, his batting all-rounderish capabilities will mean he may be able to sneak in as a second spinner nearing the end of the season, or maybe, if they're playing somewhere like Taunton or Hove, if they're wanting an extra spinner, it'll be interesting to see. And as I mentioned earlier, Calvin Harrison, the sort of 6'4" leg spinner, which is obviously a very unique thing, is sort of usually, deployed as very much a white ball bowler for Nottinghamshire, but he has had quite a lot of opportunities in red ball and done pretty well. I mean, he took 20 wickets last year and did all right. It was interesting. Nottinghamshire did have a kind of spin bowling by committee by the end of it. Very rarely do you see on the sort of wickets charts. As I was looking for Nottinghamshire, there was 3 separate spin bowlers who had a few. Calvin Harrison, I would say, is probably in the bottom of the list for the sort of pecking order now. But it'll be interesting to see if he manages to sneak in at any point. And obviously, the leg spin element means he's got a kind of a different selling point to the 2 finger spinners in Patterson-White and Farhan Ahmed. Onto the batting lineup, I think it's a strong one. It'll be led by captain Haseeb Hameed and Ben Slater. That'll be up at the top of the lineup, and it's kind of a classic right-hand, left-hand combination. It worked well for them last year. They both had very good seasons. Hameed scored over 1,000 runs at an average over 50, and Slater had scored 949 runs at an average of about 45. I mean, you take those numbers for your 2 opening batters every single day, every single year. Because simply put, there's just, there's nothing to really comment on it. So if you've got 2 batters at the top of your lineup, you average near enough around 50, you're going to get off to good starts in, scoring runs. And again, Nottinghamshire will be looking for those 2 to kind of repeat what they did in 2024. Because they were a large part of why Nottinghamshire were in good positions maybe to win games, but they never went on to win games, was because the batting unit kind of was doing its job to a certain extent. They do have the luxury of, like some teams, having a sort of established England international in their lineup or at the top of the order. Ben Duckett will probably bat 3, I think, because of how impressive that opening partnership is. But the England opener, I think, he is really proven himself to be a world-class talent, and it'll be interesting to see how he kind of looks for the 2025 season if he gets out there. But he'll definitely be, leading England at the front, at the top of the order for the current summer for England, and it'll be interesting to see if he sort of comes out to play for Nottinghamshire at all. But if he does, obviously it's a big bonus for Nottinghamshire because he is a world-class batter, I'd almost say him at this point. But in the current times where Ben Duckett won't be there, the already strength that is Nottinghamshire top order was bolstered in the emergence of Freddie McCann last year. He played similar to Ahmed near the end of the season. In his 7 innings, he scored 200s and made a 50 as well. So again, sort of half the innings he had, he kind of was above 50, and he did very well. He averaged above 50 in those games as well. And he just looked the part. As a 19-year-old, he looked comfortable, he looked composed, and he looked good enough to be able to play and bat a number 3 in a very, very good bowling division, if you will. So it'd be interesting to see how he does again with a sort of similar to Ahmed over a full season, how it will look. But he did look, again, his composed best in that round 1 fixture, and it will just be interesting to see how a full season looks, whether or not he can try and push towards that 1,000 run mark. But he's got all the signs of a batter who's going to stick around for a while in county cricket because he's got all the talent in the world. at 4, and the keeper, whilst Varane wasn't around, but Varane is already here in England, is Joe Clark. He is a very talented batter. He scored 917 runs at 50 last year, and Nottinghamshire will look for him to continue in that vein for 2025. There's not much to say about Joe Clark. He's a talented cricketer. He's a an eye-catching player when he's in full flow, and he's almost good for sort of, I'd say, within that 800 to 1,000 run range, which I think for any middle order batter you take every single day of the week. Varane is, as I say, he'll be Notts' main overseas for 2025. He played a few games last year, literally only had 4 innings. He only got out once in that time. He had an average of 248. So Carl Varane he proved himself in those short amount of times and won himself an main overseas contract for the summer. The wicketkeeper, who averages 50 in first-class cricket, I've written here, no, it's not the average Surrey Academy graduate. This is someone who's just been I've been burnt by too many good Surrey batters. It's a very rare commodity, though, to escape from my bad joke, is, getting a wicketkeeper batter who does average around 50 is just rare. You don't really see it that often. As much as I joke here, obviously there's some Surrey batters who've done pretty similar as wicketkeeper batters in the last few years, but the South Africa's keeper is a reliable run getter and a very good wicketkeeper. It's a great signing for Nottinghamshire, especially if they don't like Joe Clark being their sort of wicketkeeper and prefer him just be at the sort of middle of the top order, if you will. But it's a big season for him. It'll be interesting to see how he does over, again, a course of a whole season. I'm sure he'll probably be picked in that World Test Championship final, so it'll be interesting. I guess he won't be playing in that around then for Nottinghamshire. But aside from that, he'll be looking for a full season, really, or 12-ish games probably for Nottinghamshire. And I think he's a real reason. Sort of, if Fergus O'Neill was the main overseas, I'd probably be saying the bowling's the main strength. And I think because Carl Varane is our main overseas, I would say their batting is their strength. It kind of shows. I think for me that there's not that big of a difference. But I think they're kind of slightly dictated by who their main overseas is for this season. Another batter who will kind of consistently operate in that middle order will be Jack Haynes. He's a very talented batter. He's incredibly easy on the eye. And I feel like, he's had a very good young career. I mean, I don't think he's even 25 yet, and he's averaged 35 with the bat across sort of 5 or 6 seasons. But it always kind of feels like he's tipped for more. I feel like he's one of those players where I feel like a lot of people I talk to who are in the cricket world talk hugely, hugely highly of Jack Haynes' abilities, and it'll be just very interesting to see if he kind of plateaus at this kind of career average of 35 to 40, which is impressive and good enough to keep yourself in teams and good enough to stay in the first division, but whether or not he'll be able to push on and really become a stand-up player maybe for England or looking for selection. I feel like his 2024 kind of typifies that idea of being sort of close to potential but not quite. He never passed 100. He scored 622 runs at a kind of career average. He wasn't low averaging. He just was kind of consistently getting 50s, maybe getting out and not scoring big. So it would be interesting to see if in 2025 he can kind of deliver maybe on that full scale potential that he has. Because I think a lot of people, Jack Haynes is the real deal and that he could be a real talent that England may be looking to in the future. Anyway, so batting all-rounder Matthew Montgomery is another batter who will be looking to sort of have opportunities. I think he'll probably only feature in games maybe where Carl Varane isn't around, just because of that kind of extra batter spot is lost with an excellent overseas as he is. But his ability to bowl some spin, I think, does give him a little unique selling point compared to someone like Jack Haynes, for example. So let's say Jack Haynes doesn't have a particularly good start to the season. I think you could very much see Matthew Montgomery getting a bit more of a consistent spot, say at 5 or 6, instead of Jack Haynes in that sort of middle order. And I think he'll play pretty much every game that Carl Varane doesn't, just because, again, that sort of extra slot in that middle order opens up without Carl Varane in it. Lastly, the all-rounder who I mentioned, Lyndon James, he had a sort of strong but not spectacular year with the bat in 2024, is the way I've described it. He scored 500 runs at 35, which is nothing to sniff at as a batting all-rounder. I think he'll be looking for a bigger year. He had a massive pre-season with the bat, scored a double hundred, and then in the round 1 of first-class cricket, again, me chastising myself because I would have been big on Lyndon James no matter what, but he scored a brilliant 100 in the first round against Durham, sort of solidified himself maybe as more of a batting all-rounder than not first believed, or maybe the numbers would first suggest. And I think he'll look for a really big year with the bat this year. I mean, he started as well as he can, really, with that 100 in round 1. So I'm sure he'll be looking for sort of runs closer to 1,000. So who knows? Maybe he will have a really big season for the all-rounder. But anyway, lastly, he wasn't the last person I was going to mention for the batting. I think just a little tip of the cap to Farhan Ahmed's batting as well. Like his older brother, he's got real talent with the bat. Scored some runs for the England under-19s. Of course, it's an incredibly different ballpark playing against under-19s competition, or even if it's international, compared to professional cricketers in the County Division 1. But he did score some runs in that tour down under, so it would be very interesting to see if he can sort of translate that into any runs into 2025 for Nottinghamshire. Anyway, overall for Nottinghamshire, I fear they might have a similar season to 2024. Unless their seam bowlers returning from injury can kind of stay healthy. I think it's kind of down to the bowling. I think the batting is out of standard. I think their floor is pretty high. Like, I don't think they'll drop below much of a level. I think the floor of the bowling unit is a lot lower. Like, they could suddenly have injuries, and all of a sudden they're really looking like scraping the barrel for bowlers, because I think they've got a lot of fast bowlers who are injury prone, and I don't think that's a criticism. I think it's just the nature of the way they bowl and how fast they try and bowl, and the reason why they're all kind of tipped for England, a lot of them. I think they'll be hoping, again, as I say, hoping they'll stay fit, or hoping that some signing like Conor McCurr can have a big year. And I think they won't struggle with Fergus O'Neill in their lineup. I think that shows how much I rate Fergus O'Neill. But I think Fergus O'Neill literally will not carry them to games, but he will be a perfect kind of leader of the attack and maybe take the pressure of the other England fast bowlers. But maybe when Fergus O'Neill goes, it will be a little more interesting to see who will step up and who will be the leader of the attack. Who knows? Maybe, they'll have a really good season in that there will be no kind of issues when Fergus O'Neill goes, and all of those fast bowlers will stay fit all year, and I'll be proven wrong. And I kind of hope I am, because all of those bowlers are very, very talented, and they're all kind of vying for England selection. So, long may they do well. I really hope they do, but I'm just, I guess, presenting the idea that it might not be as simple as that. I think if Farhan Ahmed has a similar season, full season on par with the 4 matches stint he had in 2024, Nottinghamshire again will look like a really, really impressive side. I mean, all of a sudden you've got a bowler who can win you games on day 4 on a turning pitch, where they probably didn't have that for most of 2024 with a Patterson White or Calvin Harrison. I think Farhan Ahmed's, again, ceiling, to use that kind of phrasing, is a lot higher than most spinners in England and most English spinners we sort of have. So again, it'll be very interesting to see what he'll look like in 2025. Again, with the batting, I think, as I've said, I think they are consistent performers in that team. The opening pair of Slater and Hamid, Joe Clark. I think Freddie McCann has proven himself, even in that short amount of time, that he's just got the temperament and the talent to be successful in first-class cricket. And Carl Vereen, as I said, is just a consistent run-scoring threat. So I think he'll do very well. And again, the kind of middle-order young core of people like Montgomery and Haynes and Lyndon James, I think they're all proven enough that they will score runs in that sort of 5, 6, 7 slots. And again, with Vereen there, whenever he's there, I think they'll be looking like a really good side. I think the reason I think Nottinghamshire maybe aren't in the shout with really pushing up the table like they were last year, or like maybe what always any team is looking for, is just that there's too many ifs. I think that's for me whenever I'm looking at a preview. If there's sort of a lot of maybes, if buts and maybes, I want absolutes. So it'll just be interesting to see how that top half, if they can push for that top half finish, if the bowling kind of sticks around long enough for them to do that. But they'll certainly be hoping for the sort of predicted lineup. Again, not predicted lineup at this point, but Slater and Hamid will be opening the batting. It'll be Freddie McCann at 3, Joe Clark at 4. I've put Carl Vereen at 5 in wicket-keeping, but it could be Jack Haynes at 5 with Carl Vereen at 6. Lyndon James will be in that 7 slot. And then I've got Farhan Ahmed at 9, and then, Josh Tongue at 8, Farhan Ahmed at 9, Fergus O'Neill at 10, but I've put / Brett Hutton, because I think Brett Hutton will definitely get more sort of goes, if you will, when Fergus O'Neill heads home. And then lastly, Dylan Pennington in at 11. Anyway, that is the County Chat preview for Nottinghamshire. I hope you enjoyed. Check out the other videos. I think there'll be little playlist links here. Remember to subscribe if you enjoyed, and leave it a like if you also had a good time whilst you were here. Thank you very much. I've been the County Chat. Thanks for watching.